19-year-old college student was arrested for a hate crime. What was this hate crime? She's accused of defacing a pro-police back the blue sign. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. According to the report, she stumped on a sign that had back the blue on it. She crumpled it up and she threw it in the trash can, literally doing the opposite of littering, doing the opposite of a crime. Well, a police officer saw this conduct. This was because of a routine traffic stop. Yes, what she did may not have been the wisest thing to do in this small county in Utah, but it should be protected, should not be a crime or a hate crime, right? Let me give you the background. The sheriff's deputy was wrapping up a routine traffic stop at a Utah gas station last week when he saw a teen take a back the blue sign, which urged support for police officers, and stomp on it, and her friend, after her friend was pulled over. Okay, I'm still trying to find the crime here. The teen, identified in court documents as 19-year-old Lauren Gibson, then allegedly crumpled it up in a destructive manner. That's what they put in the police report, destructive manner, and threw it in a trash can. Garfield County Sheriff's Deputy Cree Carter wrote in an affidavit, the officer who accused Gibson of allegedly smirking at him in an intimidating manner arrested her. Do you hear a crime yet? It gets deeper. Garfield County Sheriff's Deputy Cree Carter said in a statement that when he was doing a routine traffic stop at a gas station, he saw the teen take a black and blue sign and stomp on it. Back the blue is a slogan that shows solidarity with law enforcement in the country, often used to counter Black Lives Matter protests as well. Okay, she gets arrested for throwing away garbage. Okay, she got arrested for that. She crumpled it up aggressively. It was just so offensive and intimidating. This police officer must have been terrified for his life because of this 19-year-old college student doing this thing in front of him. Then something else happens. Not only does she get arrested, the district attorney gets involved and decides to provide an enhancer to the initial arrest. In addition to disorderly conduct, Gibson has now been charged with criminal mischief with a hate crime enhancement. The latter crime, county prosecutors allege, was committed with, and I quote, the intent to intimidate or terrorize another person in violation of Utah's 2019 hate crime law. The hell? These folks are teaming up on this 19-year-old college student. Here's what the student had to say. If it was a dentist sign or something, and I just crushed a dentist sign or something in front of them, like nothing would have happened, she told the Daily Beast. It's the same thing, it's just an occupation. And she's correct. If she would have defaced, let's say, a dentist sign, nothing would have happened. But let me go deeper than that. If it would have been a Black Lives Matter sign, nothing would have happened. Hell, she may have been giving money for lunch, okay? So you mean to tell me that there's a law passed specifically for intimidating police officers through that action? That's insane, that's ridiculous. That makes sense to absolutely no one. A complete miscarriage of justice. Now, this 19-year-old college student, and I know some people will argue what she did was unwise. Damn that argument. What she did was legal. What she did should have never led to a criminal prosecution. Where are the conservatives who say government intrudes too much? Where are you at? Where are the libertarians who say we don't need these laws that violate or regulate regular human behavior? Where are you at on this? You're silent. You're not saying a damn word because it's contrary to your narrative. Now, I could not find a picture of the deputy who actually did this, but I found a picture of his boss. Here's his boss. This is James D. Perkins Jr., the Garfield County Sheriff. He is an elected sheriff. I have provided for you his phone number as well as his email address. And yeah, this young lady's life has been turned upside down because of this overly sensitive cop and a ridiculous Utah law and an overzealous prosecutor who says that doing something to a sign that's not even connected really to the police, it's a regular sign, it's just a sign. Because of this, she has now been charged with a hate crime. Jordan, what are your thoughts about this?
Dr. Richey, first, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. There's a couple of things as you were explaining the story that really stood out. So first, I was curious earlier and looked up when the term "back the blue," which is what the sign said, really started to gain popularity. And it wasn't until 2015. So to act like, and just to show the speed in which they implemented this, to apply these same standards that are historically been used, to have historically been used to protect marginalized groups, how swiftly they move, because that term really only started to spike in popularity in 2015. And this was after Michael Brown, after Freddie Gray, when those two murders at the hands of the police galvanized the Black Lives Matter movement. So again, this is in direct response to that and to how swiftly they applied that should be noted by people. She threw this sign away and received a slew of charges, and it shows how systemic this type of corruption and influence the cops have, and how they work hand in hand with prosecutors to keep people at bay. And this is ultimately about exerting control over people who stand up to their power. Yeah. Had she littered, had she dumped a bag of trash out of her car window, she would have received a less harsh sentence. So it just shows what this is ultimately about. But another thing you pointed out that I just looked up, if this was a Black Lives Matter sign, they probably wouldn't have gotten into much trouble. So there is an instance of that, and it was the Proud Boys in DC in the wake of Trump's election and George Floyd. All of these things coalescing and all these movements in DC, these fascist movements, they did rip down a Black Lives Matter sign off a church. And the charges they received were misdemeanor destruction of property, no hate crime, despite this clearly being targeted toward a group of people. It's a slap on the wrist and they're free to go. So it really puts things into perspective. And this is, again, I can't stress enough, this is ultimately about a militarized, jackbooted force trying to exert control over people.
And what's interesting, brother, the fact that they could not prove ownership of this paper is the reason they could not charge anyone with destruction of property. You have to prove that someone owns the property or the property is connected to ownership, a business, individual, etc. But you're right also on the fact that you're looking at a perversion of a hate crimes law movement, which said when you have an immutable quality about you, something that you cannot change, such as your race, right? You can't change your sexual orientation, for example. These are things that are innate to you as a person, as a being, as an individual. Well, we don't want people to target you just because you exist. We don't want that. And so there was a movement to say, if you do aggressive, criminal, violent acts against these individuals because of one of these factors about who they are, then you can be charged with a hate crime. Makes perfect sense. That's rooting out bigotry. It is a great thing to do. And then all of a sudden, the pushback was, well, we need to have hate crime legislation for police. Well, you see, the blue comes off, this black does not. This is one of the tragedies of our political narrative. How do we allow them to get away with telling us that being a police officer as a profession should somehow create a level of protection that other professions do not have? There's no other profession that has this level of protection. But the truth is, brother, that we've allowed them to get away with it since the 1960s and beyond, with elements like qualified immunity and more.
Yeah, this is par for the course. It's not exactly surprising that a red state like Utah would react, and the state would act in such a manner. again, I can't stress enough how this is just a perfect example of how when people try to stand up to police authority, this is how they respond. We saw it in the wake of George Floyd. They'll respond violently. They will provoke you if you. There's ample evidence of this throughout the country as people just peacefully demonstrated in opposition to someone being murdered. They will seek you out on the street. They will target you. They will shoot you with rubber bullets. They will spray you with tear gas. They will beat you when you're down. Stories we'll talk about later, the violence they inflict on people who simply get in their way or smirk in a menacing manner. The excuses they make just show how willing and easy it is for them to abuse their power, the power invested in them. It is a militarized jackboot force that has to be stopped.
Yeah, very well said, brother. Very well said.